Numbers. You don't know your business. Can you afford to expand? Make that new hire?
This
Or launch
is
a
the
new ad
Truth
campaign?
Frequency Radio Network. We are TFR.
Truth Frequency Radio.
Welcome to Spirit's Journey, coming to you live on Truth Frequency Radio and simulcast on Oneness Talk Radio. Your hosts are Patrick and Kathryn Andries.
Join us each week as we explore a wide range of metaphysical topics such as dreams, astrology, intuitive readings, and life purpose. You'll receive practical guidance so that you can live your most awesome life.
Learn more about what we do at intuitiveschool.com and connect with us on Facebook at Spirit's Journey Radio. Welcome to Spirit's Journey. We are coming to you live on Truth Frequency Radio. You can also find us on Oneness Talk Radio, iHeart, TuneIn, and TalkStream Live. We are here in the Heartland holding the energy for spiritual truth and awareness. I'm Patrick.
And I'm Kathryn. Welcome, everyone, on this lovely wintry Saturday. We have a special guest, Shelly Wilson, today. I've known her for several years, and I'm just discovering new talents that she has. She is an author, intuitive medium, conscious creator who's passionate about helping people wake up to their greatness. She supports others as they navigate their own journey into consciousness to experience aliveness. She offers mediumship readings, intuitive coaching, Reiki, and classes and workshops. You're going to want to check her out at shellyrwilson.com. Her books include 28 Days to a New You, Connect to the You Within, and Journey into Consciousness. And she is also the creator of Journey into Consciousness, Cards of Empowerment. Welcome, Shelly.
Hi, Shelly.
Hi. I'm so glad to be here.
Well, thank you. I know there's a lot of people out there that are waking up or have already woken up and want to know how to get further on their journey. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And so, Shelly, I'm curious, you describe yourself as an intuitive medium and conscious creator. That's a term I'm hearing more and more. So what does that mean to you to be a conscious creator?
Well, definitely, I feel that, so many of us are literally creating, but it may be something that we're not intentional, that it's not something we're conscious about. So this is why we want to become aware of our energetic emission with our thoughts, our words, our actions, that radio signal we're sending out. And when we are aware of that, that's how we become more conscious of what we're choosing to create. And then we become aware of what we're focusing on as well.
I love that, because even if it's something bad in our life that we don't want, we still actually created that. I think, and, my mind, and a lot of other people, when we think of creations or creating, we think of these wonderful things, but we can create also a big mess, right? If it's not conscious.
We can. Yeah. And I think, sometimes, if we can look at life, that it offers us contrast or offers us polarities, that really what we see is dualities too. So sometimes if we experience something really great and awesome, wouldn't it be natural that we would experience the contrast where things aren't so great?
Unfortunately,
right.
Yeah.
I really like that term that you use, energetic emissions, because I think we're really conscious of the effect that, for example, our transportation is having on the environment, our manufacturing is having on the environment, even just our daily living. And that is an important step that we need to take. We need to understand the effects that we are having on our environment. And the energetic emissions, that's so perfect, because it really kind of helps us remember the kind of effect that we're having on the people around us as well as just ourselves.
That is absolutely true. And, the main thing when I think about people being awake, people being asleep, of course, those are spiritual terms. And just to clarify for some listeners that may say, what exactly are they talking about? To me, being awake is having that spiritual awakening where you are in tune and aware and conscious and you're working with your intuition. And those people that may be deemed asleep may have yet to have that spiritual awakening or what they perceive to be as one, and they may just be operating on their humanness with their five senses. So it isn't a good or bad thing. It's just saying, okay, what's our consciousness level? What are we looking at? How are we approaching life?
I think that's huge. And, a lot of people have actually said, Garnet Schulhauser, who's been one of our guests in the past, and another Ozark author,
Yes.
from his guide, he got a lot of information saying that if we cleaned up our own thoughts, that we could actually solve the pollution problem, that everything out here in the world is the effect. So the cause is coming from within us.
Yes, and for some, that may be absolutely hard to fathom. They just can't go there because it doesn't make sense to them.
Well, I really love that term awake, because there was this story of Gautama the Buddha when he was sitting around with his disciples and they were trying to understand what his experience was. They're like, are you a saint? Are you enlightened? And he said, I'm awake.
Yeah. And once again, some people may not understand what that concept is, and it isn't meant to be a negative one or something, for people to dwell on. But the idea is, okay, let's look at this. Are we once again tuning in and being conscious?
Right. And so you mentioned, Shelly, that you're a medium, but an intuitive medium. That's interesting. I haven't often seen those two words put together. So can you describe the type of mediumship that you do?
Right. Well, I'm definitely a medium in the formal sense of the word, where it's a channel for spirit. And I like the word intuitive because psychic, even though it means of the soul, some people have a connotation of what a psychic is. And to me, an intuitive just feels like a term that may be received better. And it is, tuning in to that knowingness, that intuition, and then also being that channel for spirit.
That makes total sense. I mean, yeah, we don't really use the word psychic ever in our work for that reason, because there's so many stereotypes with the word psychic, and also we really don't focus on future. It's more, what are the energies? What can you do with them?
Right. And what is happening now, in this moment.
And I like the word intuitive also because, to me, when I use the word intuitive, it means that anybody can learn how to tap into their natural talents and abilities. And for me, in my mind, like when I hear the term psychic, I think of somebody who was born with that ability. You hear about these people who have these skills, but they don't really know where they came from, how they got them, how to control them. They just know they can do this. They don't know how to teach it really to anybody else. But when I think of intuitive, I always think of, you could come in without any real awakening, and then just through discipline and practice, just like if you're learning how to play the piano, just have some regular discipline and work with the skills and gradually develop your abilities over time.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And the main thing is our perception of those terms. And once again, what feels comfortable to us to use, and even what may be receptive to those people around us.
Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, Shelly, did you just one day realize, wow, I have these abilities, or was it more of a long time journey in developing them? And what age? Tell us a little about how you stumbled upon all this greatness that you're sharing with the world.
Yeah. Well, thank you. What's immediately coming to me is I've always known things. I've always been a sensitive child, energetically. I didn't know how I knew things. I just knew that I knew. And I was raised in an environment that it wasn't cultivated, and obviously times are different now than they were then. And the idea was I just, began realizing and had my own wake-up experience. Initially had some experiences in 1999, but it wasn't until 2008. And then I actually had a reading with someone who became my Reiki master, and she was in her space, I was in mine, but clairvoyantly and clairsentiently, she was reading my energy, and what she said was, Shelly, I just have to tell you, your purpose is to shine your light on others so that others can see the truth of who they really are. You're meant to heal hearts one by one by one. You see people differently than they see themselves, and that's how you make a difference. And then she began speaking to me about Reiki, which I immediately felt drawn to, and after that, I began studying and became attuned to Reiki. And then shortly thereafter, Lisa Williams, who is a medium, came into my awareness, and I studied with her as well as several other well-known mediums, and just began developing what was already there.
Wow. So did you find that as you were making these changes, that the people around you were accepting of that? I know sometimes the transition can be a little bit tricky sometimes. What was your transition like? Did people accept it?
Yeah, not so much and not so well. And, looking back, I recognize that, they were probably, very taken aback. They didn't understand. It wasn't something that they were familiar with. And even with my parents, my spouse, my children, I really had to do my best to stay in my power during that time and not receive their fear and uncertainty. And we grew together. And the beautiful thing is they're all very accepting of me now, which now it's 2020. But to me, it was a process for all of us. And once again, the more that I just knew what was right for me, that encouraged others to feel safe as well.
That's really cool. It reminds me, I always tell people when they have to make a difficult decision or they're trying to change and people aren't accepting it, as I always say, when you do what's right for you, you're doing what's right for everybody around you.
Yes.
So, like you were talking, Shelly, it really wasn't accepted when you were young. It wasn't cultivated. And, my big push is, we need to wake the kids up. The adults can go to workshops and that. And, but there's a lot of young people like yourself that were intuitive as a young child, but nobody's really bringing that out. And so, one of my dreams is to be able to, bring the spirituality to the young people. And do you have any thoughts on that or how we could even begin to do that?
Well, the first thing that's coming to me, first of all, I work with a lot of kids that are very gifted in that capacity. We can use the word psychic kids or sensitive kids as well. And the main thing that I recognize is to take note of them. What's coming to me right away is in my travels, inevitably, I sit next to one of these gifted kids, and I always make sure that I see them and acknowledge them and talk to them and encourage them. And with every experience, it's their mother or father is saying, they don't normally aren't this friendly or they're not this outspoken or things like that. And I said, well, I see them. And, sometimes it's just providing them space because so many kids do tend to get a diagnosis of ADHD or autism or Asperger's or other diagnosis. And in reality, maybe they're just really sensitive and in tune and they need help with understanding that.
That's awesome.
So in your bio, it was talking about that how you support people navigating their own journey and aliveness. Can you talk a little bit more about like what does that look like? How do you actually help people through that process?
Well, the main thing is encouraging people to see themselves as the divine sees them, as that beautiful, unique, miraculous creation that they are, and remind them that we have one life to live in this incarnation. So the more that they do those things they love and really choose to live their life rather than simply exist, to me, that's how we experience that aliveness. It's tuning in more to what brings us joy and what we're passionate about and taking action on it. And sometimes we may feel like we don't have time or that it costs too much or things like that. And that's absolutely understandable because that's, to me, part of our programming from society and culture and everything else. And this is where we have to really step into that self-love and that self-care practice, knowing that it's not selfish to do those things.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I find that more and more so, it seems like our culture consciousness is just getting things faster. Everything has to be so fast. You put instant coffee in the microwave, it's
yes.
like
immediate gratification. Yes,
exactly. So in our work, we teach that a lot of these abilities come through practice and discipline, like I was talking about. And that takes work, and people have to invest some time and practice and be patient with themselves as they are developing their abilities. So how do you help people with that dichotomy that's going on in our culture?
Well, the word I kept hearing, Patrick, was also it takes dedication. And, of course, the dedication of the time and energy investment, but also the dedication to ourselves. And the main thing, too, is to know that we have all types of influences around us. And the main thing also is just really tuning in to ourselves and listening more to our spirit, to our heart, to our gut, and meditate. I'm sure that is a practice that absolutely you teach as well and encourage people to practice as well.
Oh, yeah, I love meditation. I consider that the crown jewel of all of the spiritual practices.
Well,
And it's so simple, right?
Right.
Sometimes, a lot of people struggle with it, including myself even. Yes, I do. But I think one of the huge points that you made was this idea of self-acceptance and how you see people where they're at and accept them for that. And, I've done obviously a lot of work on myself, being on this self-development path for 20 plus years. And I still find, sometimes that low self-confidence or not accepting of myself, like, oh, I didn't do it good enough. I have to do more. I have to do better. And that's something I still have to work with all the time.
And that's okay. I do too. That's okay. That's what we want to remember, because to me, life is a work in progress. It's a continual process. And as I mentioned before we went live, I was talking about the book that I'm currently writing, and I've been poring over it word by word. Is it good enough? Am I good enough? And, I think that that's just part of our humanness, and once again, part of that process of being human.
So we got a little teaser there. Can you tell us anything about this new work of art that you're doing?
Yes. Oh, I am so excited about it. The title is Embracing the Magic Within, and this book is intended to really empower you, inspire you, and to remind you that we're all magical, that we all have the power to create, and that's what magic is. Of course, there's connotations of what magic is, but if we realize that the power is within us, that we can create our realities. And once again, there may be stuff in our fine print of our soul agreement where we don't get every single thing that we think we get or should get. And in reality, it's just this reminder to have this human life experience and to enjoy every moment. And there's no chapters. I purposefully shared personal stories and interwove them with words of wisdom and power statements and even some images here and there, just to provide that spark, to help to ignite that spark, so to speak.
Wow, that's so fascinating. So no chapters. How does that work? Because we're both writers too, so I'm just curious.
Yeah. Well, the way that I thought is first of all, it's like, anything's possible. And sometimes just when we're writing, if we have like short stories and do a collection of writings, and just knowing that it's going to flow naturally. And of course, the beautiful thing about writing nowadays is we have the Word documents that you copy and paste and you move around. So if things don't quite flow how you want them to, and if you need something to separate it, which is what I did with the power words, then we just move it around and shift it to make it feel good. And that's what I'm in the process of doing now, is going through each word, feeling every word, and making sure it's the perfect word of what I want to express.
That's okay. I've never thought of that in terms of editing, is feeling the words and do they feel right? Because I'm so mentally oriented. So I want to backtrack, because you mentioned something about that we have a life contract and we may not always get what we want. So do you believe, like a lot of metaphysicians do, that we've basically written the whole script of this lifetime before we're born, and then we come here and we're just basically playing out what we wrote our screenplay to be? Or do you think we have free will and we can change it all up and decide to chuck it out?
I do believe we have free will. My perception, of course, is that prior to coming into physical form, that we do some planning and we plan what our lessons will be for that lifetime. So rather than having a script written out, I feel like we probably have an outline. We have the high points, we have the lessons. And then as humans, we have free will, and we're playing a role in determining exactly how that's going to evolve. And when we recognize that with every choice we make, our life is ever changing. So to me, that's why I tell people too, I'm not a fortune teller, because your future's changing the next moment with the next choice that you make. And so if we look at a soul contract in that way, there's that fine print, because sometimes on that human level, we think, well, I've got to win the lottery. I know it's going to happen. Maybe it's not meant to be, even though your humanness would like it to be financially free in that regards. But in reality, maybe there's other ways that you win, and maybe there's other flows of abundance that are coming to you in that form of health and happiness and well-being.
Well, that's something we share in common, because we often we do a health and a past life reading, and often people are asking us questions about the future. And so we always have to tell them, there's no way that we can tell you definitely what is happening in the future because it's all based on probabilities. So at one point, maybe there's a 90% chance that this is going to happen. But then if you make a couple of decisions, you could go in a completely different direction. And then maybe there's only like a 10% chance that that's going to still happen. So, when people understand how things work in probabilities, I think, some of these things that people get so hung up about, is this going to happen? Is that going to happen? Am I going to, like you said, win the lottery? That's the big one, right? Mm-hmm. But then people don't often think about, well, is this really going to be in my best interest to win the lottery? I mean, you look at how many stories there are, people that have all these horrible things happen after they win the lottery because they just blow the money. They end up in more debt than before they won. All these things happen.
Well, and I kind of think one of the things that really maybe in a way sometimes messes up our life mission, what we came here to do, is other people, that we get involved in these karmic webs with people that pull us off track. Do you work with people where that's happening, and how do you help them get back on track?
Well, I definitely feel that, even part of that may be pre-planned, where we have these connections with people. They're meant to be part of our life path and so on. And sometimes it may seem that choices are made for us. And once again, this is where I remind people, okay, so what are you choosing now? Yes, this choice was made. It was beyond your control. But what are you choosing now? Are you choosing to dwell in it? Or are you choosing to release that energy, begin moving forward, and now begin creating consciously?
I love it. I love it. Yeah, what are you going to choose now? That's very empowering, in my opinion.
Yes, and when people pose questions to me and want to know, well, am I going to meet this person? Am I going to have children? Am I going to do this? And I'll say, well, what do you want? Do you want to marry this person? Do you want to have children? Based on that it's physically possible or that you both agree to it, the potential's there. So sometimes I think people, once again, put their power or give their power away, and to me that's where they're disempowered. And my intention is definitely to empower someone to know that the answers they seek can be found within if they take the time to listen. Otherwise, they're giving someone else that power to make choices for them.
Yeah. So with what we're talking about that you teach here, do you think that everyone needs to learn this? And does everyone have the ability to be intuitive? I mean, we talked about all the dedication that's required. Is this something that you feel like everybody really needs to spend time developing?
I feel like everyone is capable, Patrick. And the main thing, though, is if people are willing, because once again, some people just don't believe it, or they're skeptic, or they just don't even want to go there. And that probably is part of their life path. But to me, if they begin embracing it and tuning in more, and a lot of what the development involves is just begin taking note with your five senses. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you feel? What do you know? And even what do you smell? As you begin tuning into what comes into your awareness, taking note of it, you heighten those senses, and that's where you become more sensitive to tune in even better.
Right. And I think the free will issue is a big one in a lot of people's minds, including mine, because I think there's a paradox there that on the one hand, it looks like we have free will, right? Like if I want to go to the store right now, I can, or if I want to watch TV. So I experience free will. But then on a larger scale, how much free will do I really have in terms of being here on the earth or somewhere else? So I think that's kind of sometimes what can confuse people is, this paradox that it exists and yet it doesn't exist.
Right. And once again, I think it's as far as, how deep do you want to delve on that topic? And do you really want to analyze it? Or do you want to just begin saying, what, I realize there are things I can control and there are things I can't. And to me, just to remind everyone, what I believe is the only things we have control of are our own thoughts, our words, our actions, what we perceive, our emotions, and then how we choose to respond. And then pretty much else, everything is beyond our control.
That simplifies it really nicely, Shelly. So this is fascinating stuff, and I want to give you a minute to tell people how can they get in touch with you if they want to do any of the incredible readings you offer, coaching, Reiki sessions. Where are you? How can they find you?
Yes, well, I'm located in Oklahoma, but I do sessions online as well. You can go to my website, ShellyRWilson.com. You've got to put that R in there or you'll get someone else who's not me. And then you can also find me on Instagram and Facebook at Intuitive Medium Shelly.
Great. And do you do the Reiki sessions long distance? Is that possible?
I do. Yes, you can do distant healing, and so we coordinate a time where we're in sync and working with the energy in that way.
Great. And do you have any upcoming workshops or classes in your area?
Actually, I'm in the process of scheduling. I do Cindy Green's Spirit Fair, and we have yet to schedule a date for the Kansas City area, but we'll be in Tulsa February 8th and 9th, and back in Oklahoma City April 10th and 11th, and I'm already booked to head back to Lilydale, New York, which is a spiritualist community an hour outside of Buffalo, and I'll be visiting there mid-July to teach 2 workshops, and I'm going to New Renaissance Bookshop in Portland, Oregon, the first week in June.
Wow, you are all over the place. We've been to the spiritualist camp in Indiana, Camp Chesterfield. I have not been to Lilydale.
I was there last summer as well, yes.
Amazing places. Have you been to Lilydale before?
Yes. And Lilydale, I absolutely love. This season will be my 6th season to be there. And the first time I went was in 2014, and I fell in love immediately. So if you love Camp Chesterfield, think of that even magnified more.
All right. Well, we are coming up on our break. We are going to come back after the break to have a second half with Shelly R. Wilson. And so while you're on break, you can visit our page at Frequency Radio, that's PFRlive.com, and you can order of the station. Proceeds actually help our show as well. This is Spirit's Journey on Frequency Radio. See you on the other side.
Real people, real radio. Wherever you are, make it TFR. Truth Frequency Radio.
Her ShellyRWilson.com.
All right. So Shelly is an intuitive medium, conscious creator, and author. And I want to delve into some of these amazing books that you've got out there for people, Shelly. And one of them is Journey into Consciousness. And from this book, I can tell you really provide a lot of guidance and help educate people about their own internal transformations that happen as they awaken. And I know for myself and a lot of people, sometimes when we start to wake up, we almost feel like we're going crazy because the outside world is so different. And we're like, what's going on? So how do you kind of help people with this transformation process?
Absolutely. Well, the first thing I definitely want to address is it is a journey, and life is a journey. And so with Journey into Consciousness, I shared the pivotal experiences from my life up to my awakening to when the book came out. So that was 2 separate sections. And then throughout the entire book, I included how you can apply my experience and my lesson to your own life. And then the 3rd section, I provided you tools for your journey. So this wake-up process, for some, it can be overwhelming, and for some, it can be daunting, and they can definitely be afraid, especially if they don't have people around them to support them, which is why I find that it's so important that everyone has someone to support them on their journey. And sometimes that are fellow travelers, people that are waking up as well. And people, of course, may be at different places on their journey also. So I find that it's really important that we do not compare our journey or our spiritual journey to anyone else, that we can definitely observe and take note, but we really don't need to compare. And what's really most important is to do our best not to have jealousy or envy, because if we can once again realize that we all have the power to choose and that we can decide what is right for us, what books we want to take, what classes we want to or books we want to read, classes we want to take, and modalities we may want to study, really it's up to us to begin deciding for us what's right for us.
And I love that, because having a companion along the journey, I've been so fortunate to have met Patrick. That was one of my goals. I said, I've got to be with somebody who is on the same wavelength. And I get so many women saying, where are all the metaphysical men? Because they want this partner on the journey. And, you know, when I teach my classes over the past 20 years, you know, I get a couple token men in the classes, sometimes none, sometimes one or two. Why does it seem, or at least in my experience and that of others, that it's 99% women and there's so few men on this journey?
I think part of it, and this is just my perception, and the idea, you know, once again, also the way that men have been conditioned. You know, they haven't necessarily been supported to embrace their sensitivity, to embrace their emotions, have not necessarily been encouraged. And I think those that are waking up, and this is what I've come into contact for myself from my own students, is that they may not necessarily have someone to support them either. And so it does take a lot of courage for someone to say, you know what, this is right for me. I want to learn and grow and evolve. And I always tell them, you know, they're helping to balance that masculine. And of course, if there's one out of a class of 10, they've got a lot of balancing to uphold.
Maybe that's why it's hard for them. You know, because I laugh in these classes I teach, you know, it's 10 women and one man. And, you know, I think they do enjoy it to some degree. But yeah, we need to be waking up the men as well. So all these women who are awakening have partners that are on the same page.
Right.
Well, what my experience, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Patrick.
I was going to say, from my experience being a man in the spiritual field, is that I think a lot of guys, they tend to be more physically focused. You know, a lot of guys go more for, you know, the physically active sports, and then they get out and they're really focused on creating and you know, earning money to support the family and things like that. And you do find that men have spiritual things, but a lot of times when you really talk to them, they find their spiritual time maybe out on the golf course because it's relaxing and they're out in nature, or they go out fishing and things like that. So when I talk to other guys, sometimes they're talking about spiritual experiences, but they may not relate it as a spiritual experience. So I think it is education, like you said, and people realizing what those experiences really are, and also how it can benefit them. Because I think, you know, some guys may not realize how these kinds of things can actually benefit them with all the other things that they do.
Yeah, and you are absolutely right. You expressed it perfectly, because that is exactly the same instances that many talk about. And going back to what you said earlier, Kathryn, you know, saying that sometimes even you struggle with meditation. And that's why I remind people, well, let's reframe your perception of meditation, because a lot of people feel like it has to be sitting quietly for long periods of time. And that may work for some, but really the idea of meditation is to clear your mind so spirit can speak, so you can receive clarity that you're seeking. And if mowing the lawn or playing golf or cleaning the house or working in your flower beds or going for a walk is meditative to you and you can clear your mind, that's meditation.
Yeah, I call those, you know, mindless activities. Like for me, it's folding the laundry. I don't have to think about how to do it, but I'm engaged. So I'm not just, you know, monkey mind. And I get amazing insights when I fold the laundry. Patrick's probably laughing because we often have baskets full that haven't been folded in a while. But when I do fold them, I get these great insights.
So what he's saying is, Kathryn, meditate. You need to meditate.
Right. You need to go upstairs and meditate.
That's the code word for go fold the laundry. I love it. So I can imagine that these cards of empowerment that you've written can be helpful for people. How can these cards help somebody, and why did you decide to create them as opposed to another book?
Yes, well, actually, they're comprised of pictures that I've taken. So I love flowers. I have lots of flower beds, and I always love admiring flowers on my travel. And I've just been taking pictures, and it was October of 2018. I woke up literally one Sunday, and Spirit said, create your cards. And I'm like, what? And they said, it's time to create your cards. And I was like, okay, because I had thought about, taking my pictures, putting power words on them, and I literally Googled make playing cards, because to me I wanted them to be the size of a deck of playing cards, and came up with a company that's called makeplayingcards.com. And so within 4 days, I compiled the images I wanted to use, created them, placed the words on them, and submitted my order. And the deck is 52 cards. There's also 5 blank cards in there if you want to write your own image. And I purposely did not include an instruction booklet. I did include an intention card, and what it said is, my intention is for you to work with these cards as you're guided to do so. I want to empower you to work with them. And you may be guided to ask a specific question, or simply ask, what do I need to know for today? And then you can shuffle the cards, or just swirl them around and pull one card or 4 cards or however many, and just see what the response is. So if you're agreeable to it, I'll just see what Spirit wants to offer us right now, because I have a deck right in front of me.
Oh, that would be great.
Okay. So the card that I reached for, and this is so funny, is Create Consciously. So this is that reminder of how we started our conversation today. Once again, become aware of our thoughts and words and actions, and really begin focusing on what we want to create. And I want to add, too, 2020 this year, which it's amazing that here we are. But if we think of optically speaking, 2020 means clear vision. So this is that time to get clear about what we desire, what we want to manifest and create, and get clear about how we want to feel, and then begin focusing energy there.
That's so interesting. I have noticed an energy since the first of the year that is just like making me compulsively want to organize everything. I don't know if maybe that has something to do with the 2020 vision, like getting everything clear.
Yes.
But
what I'm hearing, Patrick, is preparedness. It's helping you for preparedness. So
right.
Who knows what that's for? Yeah.
Yeah. So it'd be interesting to see where that leads. But yeah, I just have had this almost like a compulsive urge within me, like, oh, I just got to get everything organized, because I just feel like, I got to get everything set.
And honey, I will totally support you on that. I'm looking at some piles that need organizing here. So, Shelly, what are some of your insights for 2020? I know you don't read the future, but I'm always asking this because so many people want to know and have actually some positive feelings about 2020. I've delved into a lot on our shows, astrologically, what I see. So I'm curious, have you picked up on any energies?
Well, I know with numerology that because this is a 4 universal year, this is a time of growth, and it is a time of laying our foundation and creating our reality. So what I feel with this, first of all, I just feel so at peace. And knowing that today is the 25th day of this year, it just feels like everything feels good. And I just feel like the more that people intentionally focus on that feel-good feeling and what they want to create, and know at times there may be challenges, or they may be challenged, that the idea is to how you're going to respond to it. How are you going to approach it? And are you going to let it overwhelm you, or are you going to just be present and once again decide what is right for you?
I love that, because it's not what happens to you, but it's how you respond to what happens to you. And I think that I explain to people, and I have to remind myself all the time, everything in this physical world is really just a prop for us to learn something. And so it doesn't matter what the prop was. It's just like, how are you going to respond to this incident? And I think that's where our power comes from. Like you said in the beginning, we sometimes cannot control what happens to us, but we sure can control how we respond.
Absolutely. And a lot of people feel like people will say or do things, and then we get upset or disappointed or whatever. And I tell people, I say, well, first of all, no one can actually make you feel that emotion. They could do or say something where that's how you react, but they can't actually make you feel disappointed or make you feel frustrated. So you, once again, have the power in how you're choosing to feel.
So along those lines, I've noticed a trend where a lot of people seem to be getting very frustrated about feeling like they can't really create what they want to in our culture, our society. There seems to be differences of opinion. People want to go one direction or another direction, and people are getting frustrated because they feel like they're being thwarted. But then I'm also seeing where it seems like there's this movement where people are less willing to listen to each other, because if there are these differences of opinion, obviously there's a different perspective that people have, and I feel like it's really important for people to be able to listen to each other and be able to really go into a good dialogue again, so that we can work these things out. But do you have any advice for how we can move forward in this current climate in our country where people there's so many differences of opinion?
Yes,
right.
Yes, and I think sometimes, once again, the way that I would view it is because people feel that, this is the way we've always done it, or this is how my parents did it, or so on, so this is how I have to do it. And they're not really choosing for themselves something that resonates with them. So I feel like a lot of it, too, is, do we want to come together, mutually support, have agreements, or do we want to be very rigid with where we are and how we've always done things? Or can we be a bit more flexible and begin looking at these experiences more from a higher soul perspective to see, well, what are the solutions? Because once again, there's a saying, you can't solve the problems, or you can't have the solutions in the same energy where the problem is, something to that effect. So you have to be able to shift energy around that. And also, when we realize that everything is energy, it's vibration, it's frequency, tuning in more to that will help us to understand as well. And also, once again, people are at different levels of consciousness.
And I think that's why with counseling, not to bash it, but a lot of times people go through years and years and years of counseling, and counseling takes place at the mental level, you mind to mind, rehashing stuff. It's like, that's where the whole problem was started. And so I think a lot of times when we add things to typical counseling, like breath work, Reiki, whatever, you can get so much quicker results.
Yes, and I'm not wanting to bash it either, but sometimes my perception is that perhaps the counseling is continuously going over the same experiences. And sometimes I feel like, we need to be in that energy for a while, but we also need to move past it when the time is right and not continue to relive it.
That's why when we were talking about meditation earlier, I feel like that is such an amazing form of self-care, because when you go within, you aren't really even focusing on a problem or anything in particular necessarily. You're just focusing on reaching inside to that core of who you are and just reconnecting with that inner core, that inner essence of, you could think of it as your highest self or however you like to think of it. But that does, I think, it changes our perspective, and you may not even come out with any particular answer that's in a very kind of a very obvious sense, but you just come out and you feel different. And I think that's how we can really measure our progress. Well, how do we feel? Is this making a difference? And I've always found, looking back, that even though from one day to another I may not experience a huge difference, but when I look back, it's like the changes and the difference is just immense as I look back through time.
Absolutely. And once again, sometimes it takes where we have to have a little bit of time pass where we can reflect and we can look back over things and have that different perspective. And part of it is our wisdom. We gain wisdom through life experience, through age, and through obviously just having those experiences as well.
So what kind of advice would you give somebody that's just getting started, somebody who wants to develop their spiritual abilities?
The main thing, first of all, is really do your best to be who you are. to know what is right for you. And when you begin knowing that, because sometimes people are like, I don't even know what I want. And I always say the questions that unlock the door to more are, who am I, why am I here, and what am I supposed to be doing? So pose those questions to the universe, to your guides, to your angels, and begin listening to the responses that are coming through. And the more that you explore, once again, read books and take classes and watch videos. You know, YouTube has so many offerings in the spiritual realm that we can just learn and grow in that regards. But the main thing is knowing that you're human, because a lot of people want to go beyond this. They want to ascend. They talk about 5-dimensional stuff. And I think that's great. But I believe because we're here having this human life experience, we need to embody being human.
I love that because, yeah, we always get asked, how can I make this my last incarnation? Like, I want to get out of this earth plane. And I think the people that ask that are the ones that are probably going to have to come back because in some way they're rejecting, this experience. And yeah, it can be painful. There's a lot of ups and downs, but if you've got a partner along on the journey and, you embrace it, that's when I think you really are able to not have to come back, if that's a choice for somebody. But I love the questions that you have people ask themselves. Who am I? What am I here for? I mean, that's like the whole focus of my life. I focus on life purpose, and I teach people you've got to take the first step in self-awareness. Number one, know who you are. And know what is your purpose in life. And it is not just one day it comes to you, like you said, it's a journey. And, we've all been on this journey a long time. And sometimes we still question, am I doing the right thing? But those are the central questions that people, I feel, really need to be asking.
Yes. And I will tell you, what I tell people when they say, well, what is my purpose? I said, well, I'm going to make it easy. Your purpose is to have a human life experience. Now, what you want to do with that is up to you. So you begin tuning in, once again, to your heart, your spirit, letting it guide you, and discover what you're passionate about and what brings you joy. Just like my purpose is to do exactly what I'm doing. I know that I'm meant to interact with people, to teach, and to even do radio shows as I'm doing one today. And I love it. And the more that we realize, once again, what brings us joy, and as the Life is Good slogan or tagline, it's do what you love and love what you do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is simple when we break it down to that, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
not always possible, but you can begin creating it.
Yeah. So, do you have any other, thoughts or advice that you might give, kind of in a general sense, in terms of, where people are going at this time of year?
As far as for 2020, is that what you're asking, Patrick?
Right. Any other thoughts about 2020?
Yeah, I just feel like this can be an amazing year, and I'm hearing it's a year of miracles, too. So the more that we recognize that miracles are always happening, it's just our perspective. It's how we choose to view life.
I love that, because when we accept that miracles can happen all the time, they begin to do. It's really a belief of, what's possible. And, a lot of people have been really down about, the world situation. We've got so many looming problems, as we always have. And what I tell people is, it's not that these problems didn't exist last year or 5 or 10 years ago. It's just that the veil is now being removed so that we're seeing more of the corruption, deceit, and so forth. And it's been going on. It just was out of our view. And now Pluto, because I'm an astrologer, I've been describing, is coming to the surface, helping bring all this junk up so that we can look at it, clear the path for something new, that it looks kind of ugly out there right now. But that's Pluto doing its work. And this is a place of learning. It's a melting pot. And if we keep that in perspective, then it's like, oh, this is good. It's all coming up to be looked at, to be transformed.
Yes, and the main thing is, whether we deem it good or bad, right or wrong, it's once again a label that we're placing on it. And if we think of contrast, and to me, I would want to be clear or have the clarity. I want to tune in. But at the same sense, we have the choice if how much time and energy we invest in that. Do we want it to consume us? Do we watch the TV or on social media or things like that? Because once again, we have the choice with how we invest our time and energy.
Totally. Yeah. It's all about the choice and the power of making choices. And so in the book, The Journey of Consciousness, do we ever reach a point where this idea of, I don't have to come back to this physical plane anymore? I mean, is your book meant to get us to that spot for those that are just itching to get out of this world?
That concept never even crosses my mind, because I think, how great would it be to come back again? What do I want to do again on this next go around? So I do have people ask me, is this my last lifetime? And I'm like, I don't know. That choice is yours. You decide once you get to the planning table again. But I just think how amazing it is to be able, and, the different time periods and different experiences. My eyes light up thinking about it.
Yeah, I agree. And I've had a lot of people ask me that too. And I agree with what we talked about earlier, that a lot of times whenever people are asking me, oh, this is my last lifetime, or how can I make this my last lifetime? I'm always thinking, well, you're probably going to be coming back if you're in that big of a hurry to get out of here.
Right.
But I've also heard stories of, people who have become enlightened or awakened, or however we like to describe that, who have chosen to come back. So it is a choice. It's just like a journey. And when you look at the bigger context that we are spiritual beings, and it shifts your perspective of what all this really is, that we're just coming into this temporary experience here. And it's, our body is just like buying a car. We have this car, we like it. We drive around, we have all kinds of adventures with it. And then we get a new car later. And so we're just, going from one car to another. And just in the same way, eventually, we may drive around the United States, and when we've seen enough of that, we may go to Europe. So it's like we could, who knows where we may end up. But it's when we look at that spiritual perspective, that we are really these eternal beings of energy first and foremost. Then the whole concept of what has to happen when takes a completely different perspective.
Exactly, and I'm totally smiling when you use the car analogy, because I actually use that in my book. And I said, we pick the car we want to drive for this lifetime, but sometimes that car may be chosen for us. So I totally love that you use that.
Well, and the exciting thing about thinking about our next life is that we get to take everything that we learned in this life, the wisdom, the experiences, and of course it's stored in the soul, subconscious mind, and that comes with us. So I always tell people, take advantage of every opportunity to help somebody, to learn something, because that is going to be carried over to your next lifetime. Everything we're doing, thinking right now is tracing our next lifetime.
Yeah, I love it.
So, Shelly, I've loved having you on for the show. It looks like we are nearing the end. So can you remind everybody how they could reach you again?
Yes, you can visit my website, ShellyRWilson.com, and you can also find me on social media at Intuitive Medium Shelly, and I'm on Facebook as well as Instagram.
Awesome. I'm going to have to check out your Instagram. I have not been on that. So that's one of the social media things I don't do a lot. So I'm going to go on there and check it out, Shelly. Well, thank you so much for sharing this. And do let us know when your book, Embracing the Magic Within, comes out.
Absolutely, and thank you both. I've had a wonderful time, and what I really love is the concept of your show, Spiritual Solutions for Everyday Problems, and how you focus on practical spirituality that helps people in their life. That is so important.
Oh, thank you. We agree. Well, we love having all of you with us as well, so please connect with us on Facebook at Spirits Journey Radio, and be sure to like our page, so that we can be part of your life and you can be part of ours. Just because our show is ending doesn't mean we have to part ways. You can also study with us or get a reading with us at intuitiveschool.com. This has been Spirit's Journey live on Truth Frequency Radio and simulcast on Oneness Talk Radio. I'm Patrick Andries.
And I am Kathryn. Have a wonderful week. We're going to see you next week with another awesome guest. Don't miss us.
Bye for now.